Hamas says it has released the last remaining living Israeli hostages held by the group. The first batch of 7 were released earlier today, followed by 13 more as part of the large-scale prisoner swap mediated by Egypt and Qatar. The International Committee of the Red Cross is facilitating the handover to the Israeli side. Another batch of the bodies of deceased hostages is also expected later today. Meanwhile, the first batch of Palestinian detainees and prisoners released from Israeli prisons has arrived in the occupied West Bank. About 2,000 are due to be released in total. In Gaza, nearly a dozen masked and black-clad gunmen, apparently Hamas's armed wing members, arrived at Nasser Hospital, where a stage and chairs had been laid out to welcome returning Palestinian prisoners. Aid has started entering the enclave as the UN aid chief said on X that Israel approved delivery of more emergency supplies. The main UN agency working in Gaza, UNRWA, urged Israel to let it work unhindered in the territory. Meanwhile, the U.S. president, who is in Israel, has told reporters that the Gaza war is over. Donald Trump is in Israeli Knesset to address parliament ahead of joining a Middle East peace summit in Egypt. Further steps in Trump's 20-point plan have yet to be agreed by the two sides. Those include how the devastated Gaza Strip will be governed once fighting ends and the ultimate fate of Hamas, which has rejected Israel's demands that it disarms. Alongside other world leaders, they will discuss how they can achieve broader Middle East stability. We're now on the ground in Gaza, Egypt and Israel. Our correspondent Rami Al-Magari is in Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip. Jonathan Regev is in Tel Aviv, and in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, we have Adel Mahroui. They're all standing by. So Jonathan, let's begin with you. You are on the Israeli side. What's the latest from on the release of Israeli hostages and bodies of those who died in captivity and Palestinian prisoners as well?
So we are on the first half of the day, which will be quite special for Israel. We're on the ecstatic part. Why ecstatic? Because the 20 living hostages in Gaza have all been freed, have all been transferred to Israeli hands. The first batch that included 7 hostages have actually already flown to hospitals in central Israel. We actually saw one of the helicopters taking injured people to the Tel Aviv Medical Center, which is very close to where we are. Another 13 have already been transferred from Gaza and are in Israeli territory and will also shortly make their ways to the hospitals. All of them are in relatively good conditions, on their feet, walking, speaking, met their families. So a lot of ecstasy, a lot of euphoria regarding this. The second part of the day, which will begin in the afternoon, will include the return of some hostage bodies. Let's remember, for the moment, there's still 28 hostage bodies held by Hamas in Gaza. Some of them will return. Why just some of them? Hamas is claiming that it has not been able to locate so far all of the bodies. Therefore, some bodies will be returned. Others are still being searched. The mood of then will be a bit more somber, but at least for now, huge happiness here in Israel. The entire country coming together, watching together the 20 living hostages, all of the living hostages coming back from Gaza to home in Israel.
Yeah, huge relief for Jonathan, I can imagine. But just give us a sense, give us a bit more of what's happening, you know, the sense of the feelings, the emotions and reactions in Israel among the hostage families and Israelis as these hostages are released.
Maybe this could help us understand. Ever since 4 a.m. in the morning local time, that is more than 4 hours before the first release, Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, the place which became symbolic with the fight for the release of the hostages, was packed with tens of thousands of people. Today is a holiday eve in Israel. This is a day where usually there are not a lot of public events, but this holiday eve is different. Far, far more happy than any other holiday eve we've seen clearly in the past 2 years. And tens of thousands of people, maybe even 100,000 gathered here in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. Many others gathering to watch together around the country. There were huge sighs of relief when the hostages were seen for the first time. Let's remember, some of them Israelis have not seen for 2 years and a week actually, since they have been kidnapped. This is the first time that they're seen, and they're seen in relatively good condition. Even those that were seen in the videos released by Hamas, back then their situation looked much worse than what has been seen today. The hostages on their feet, walking. Tens of thousands of people still gathering here at the square, even though the handover of the living hostages has already ended more than an hour ago. Huge happiness, really ecstasy here in Israel. Now, of course, comes the more difficult part. First, as we mentioned, the return of the hostage bodies, and then the question of what comes next, what role Hamas will have in Gaza. Will the ceasefire last, or is it only just a pause until the next time? Okay. Many questions still remaining.
All right, Jonathan, let's bring in Adel. Egypt has been quite instrumental in getting us to where we are today, Adel. What is the reaction among the leaders and diplomats there in Egypt on the release of Israeli hostages and bodies, as well as Palestinian prisoners, even as they wait for that Gaza Peace Summit?
Well, there is a sense of relief among the region, among the leaders who are participating in today's summit. We're talking about leaders and international organizations that amass to 30 different countries and organizations, and therefore there is a sign of solidarity to the breakthrough that we're seeing today. It started in Israel with the release of hostages, as you've mentioned, and the release of Palestinian prisoners. There is a sense of support, of course, before even these actions took place. Once a deal has been brokered in Sharm el-Sheikh, there was a global voice of support and encouragement to both the Palestinians and Israelis that a step towards peace is now closer. The execution is a relief because it shows that everyone is holding to their part of the bargain, and then there is serious commitment to at least the first phase of the agreement that has been reached here. While that is the case, there still are concerns about the future, because the future of the negotiations are the most crucial. They are the foundation for a lasting peace. The governance of Gaza, the disarmament of the Palestinian armed resistance groups are all issues that have not been reached in terms of an agreement. Earlier, yesterday, the Prime Minister of Qatar, one of two main mediators along with Egypt and Turkey, has announced that the next phases of negotiations have not started and were postponed because both parties, Hamas and Israel, were not ready to discuss it. With the execution of these first phase, the implementation and partial withdrawal of Israeli forces in Gaza, that sets quite a comfortable environment for the negotiations to resume and hopefully for lasting peace to stretch. And that is basically why everyone is gathering here in Sharm el-Sheikh.
All right, Adel, thank you very much for that. Adel Mahri live for us there in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. We had Jonathan Regev as well for us in Tel Aviv. And we're afraid we couldn't be able to connect with Rami Al-Meghari, but we'll try and raise him to get that perspective from Gaza.